Good day, everyone. My name is Juan Crisopierdi Angeles, and I am with my wife, Syra M. Angeles, and I will be presenting our research entitled Perception of Young Members of the Aita Community about the Intellectual Property Rights for Their Traditional Knowledge Systems, uniquely Magbukun. To give you the background, I want to show you this picture. So, this is an artwork of my student representing one of the traditions of the Magbukun community. They call it pangangagon. In this particular tradition, they call the spirits and then heal someone with a disease using the spirit. Now, this particular drawing, I tested to put it in a t-shirt. I have this startup business here in our place wherein I can put designs in a t-shirt. So, with this particular scenario, I was able to put the essence of one of the traditions in a particular commodity. Now, after doing this, I had this realization that it is not only me who can do this. Given the resources, a larger company can uh, do scaling up of such commodities. Now, the problem is while I am doing this particular design, putting it in a t-shirt, I just realized that can we actually do this? Is there a law? Is there a law that regulates us in doing such thing? It's like commodifying the tradition of the indigenous people. This particular realization urged me to conduct this research. So I searched the literature, and one of the authors said it's Lacus and Matur 2022. They argued that the recognition of intellectual properties such as patent has been with direct conflict with indigenous knowledge systems. Another earlier study, Taubman 2012, cited that there are three major assumptions about intellectual property protection of indigenous people. Number one, IP focus on privacy rights of commercial firms. How about small startups like the one that I have here? Number two, IP is time bound and considerate about the intergenerational context of traditional knowledge systems. So, as you can see, with our intellectual property rights system, there are specific years for the patenting. And then for number three, IP is a form of commodification, making indigenous culture a commodity that can be traded globally. This particular reason is the rationale of my research. I had this realization that I am somehow commodifying, and maybe a lot of people is commodifying the traditions or the traditional knowledge systems of indigenous people. Now, upon searching literature, I found this local citation. The Intellectual Property Office, or the IPOPIL, together with the National Commission on Indigenous People, the NCIP, has implemented an administrative order referred as the Rules and Regulations of Intellectual Property Rights Application and Registration Protecting the Indigenous Knowledge Systems and Practices of the Indigenous Peoples and Indigenous Cultural Communities. So I feel positive that the questions that I have now has a question, but then searching and validating this information, I just found out that right now uh, they are under the law that or the regulation that will facilitate in regulating the IP for indigenous knowledge systems is under construction, or they are currently modifying it. So it means that right now there is no actual regulation that should encompass the violations about intellectual property rights of indigenous knowledge systems. With this background information, I formulated this objective. The objective of this research is to explore on the experiences of young members of the Magbukun tribe who have assimilated into the current educational curriculum and show how they perceive their intellectual property rights for their traditional knowledge systems. Now, as you can see, I focus on the young members of the Magbukun tribe because with my experience as a teacher, we have these students who graduated and somehow has this knowledge about the meaning of intellectual property and how their tradition should be recognized. Now this will be the framework of my study. As you can see in the Venn diagram, assimilation, the perception about the knowledge systems, the perception about intellectual property rights, and if you combine those three, you will have the young members' perception about the intellectual property rights of their traditional knowledge systems. So initially, I have this assumption: young members of the Magbukun tribe who have assimilated into the current curriculum are aware of their intellectual property rights. For their traditional knowledge systems. Given the education, I assume that they are aware of those IP regulations. And then I have this research question that will be answered in the findings. What are the perceptions of young members of the Mampun tribe who have assimilated into the current educational curriculum about their intellectual property rights for their traditional knowledge systems? For the methodology, I use a qualitative research method, phenomenology. And then for choosing the participants, I use snowball sampling. I interviewed one student, and then that particular student referred me to another. And then for the data gathering, I use Facebook Messenger for conducting the semi structured interviews. And then lastly, for the data analysis, I use thematic analysis to come up with the themes for the findings. Now, here are the findings. First, one of the themes is that traditions like traditional healing, making fire using bamboo, wearing traditional clothes during ceremonies, the students are still aware of these traditions. This is the first theme that I found from the transcript. And then the second one, they have enough recognition are given to our tribe as the original flag bearers of our culture. So, based from my interviews from the students, they have this perception that enough recognition are given for their tribe. The next one of the perception of student is that respect and value are given to our tradition. The next one is enough credits and property rights are given to our tribe. The next one is that they are proud and allotting time to celebrate our traditions. The term they is the outsider. They are pertaining to the outsiders. And then lastly, outsiders believe and patronize our culture. So those are the findings. As you can see, they have this positive perception about the usage of their tradition in different ceremonies in the mainstream culture. Based from the findings and the literature review that I conducted, I formulated this conclusion. So initially, I believe that the young members of the Magbukun tribe are still aware of their grassroots traditions. Secondly, these young members of the Magbukun tribe will pass down these traditions, but then uh, they are formulating this kind of mimicry and recognition of their tradition that made them believe that there is enough and proper intellectual property rights given to their tribes when the outsiders are using their knowledge systems, and somehow it's a form of exploitation. This cultural exploitation includes various forms of cultural appropriation, which is one of the consequences of coloniality. Furthermore, it should be noted that based on the themes, this cultural appropriation and other cultural exploitation may consciously or unconsciously be committed by both public and private institutions from the mainstream or the outsider culture, and are not currently being addressed accordingly by the intellectual property protection system and other related laws in the Philippines. So, just like in my case, I unconsciously exploited the tradition by putting the design in the t-shirt that I am making. Together with those conclusions, I formulated these recommendations based from the findings and the literature that I gathered. Uh, I suggest that intergenerational perception should be considered by future researchers to gather an in-depth examination and exploration of the members, the community members' perception on IP rights of their traditional knowledge systems. And then secondly, I recommend that other research method can be used aside from phenomenology that I use in this study. They can use narrative. They can examine the stories behind to have a deeper understanding of their perceptions. And then thirdly, I recommend that a thorough examination of intellectual property protection system and how implementing bodies relay these roots to the traditional knowledge protection, such as positive and negative protection of the traditional knowledge systems. So this should also be considered by future researchers. Also, based from the background that I provided, uh, when studying indigenous communities, there is this kind of reciprocity. So it means that we should be giving something to the community because we are gathering the data in that particular location. So this something is not measured through material things, but it can be a framework, a knowledge that we should give the community. So with this, I recommend that the government and as well as the non-government institution should consider conducting discussions about these IP protection rights and in their engagement with the indigenous communities. And then also, I recommend that the Department of Education, together with the Commission of Higher Education, uh, who's who were the forefront of learning in the community, should consider intellectual property protection discussions uh, in their educational curriculum. So we should be more aware about these IP rights, so that we will not be violating them. Then, lastly, I recommend that future researchers consider to explore more related topics such as indigenous resurgence, cultural regeneration, and cultural appropriation among indigenous communities. Now, I want to end my presentation with this slide. Two well-known personality wearing the traditional attire of indigenous people. So I can say that there is a paradox behind. Paradox meaning there are two truths. The first one, we can say by seeing it, seeing them wearing those traditional attires, is that we can say that they are patronizing or representing them or giving praise to that particular indigenous community. But also, by doing that, it's a form of cultural appropriation. There is no proper way of recognizing or giving credit to the community. We are using it every day. We are seeing it in the social media that different uh, different peoples in the community are using this. So really, we are not aware that we are unconscious of our violation of the intellectual property rights for the indigenous people. So with that, I hope that other research will focus on this kind of issues because we have to protect them. The indigenous people should be protected and should be treated as co-equal with the mainstream culture. Thank you for listening, and I hope we were able to share our knowledge clearly with the audience. Thank you, Philippine Sociological Society, for this opportunity. And these are the references that I use. And again, thank you and have a great day. Maraming salamat.